Here with John Assaraf at the Encore in Las Vegas. Now, John is somebody who you might have recognized from the movie The Secret, where he talks about how he had a vision board, and on that vision board was his particular house. And he actually ends up, using the law of attraction, moving into that house. He's also somebody who has written many best-selling books. He built Remax of Indiana, which is doing about, $4.5 billion a year. And he has now created an amazing company called NeuroGym, where he talks about reprogramming how your mind works and unlocking its full potential. And that's what I'm really interested about, because what you were just talking about earlier, about how there's people who are categorizing how they think in certain ways. I'd love you to talk about what you're doing and also what is going on with, I guess, what you call the brain of thought.
Sure. Hey, everyone. Great to be here. The fascination that I have is around living in a world right now where we have access to all the how-to. How do I make more money? How do I grow my business? How do I have a great relationship? How do I, find the love of my life? How do I put a rocket ship on Mars? And a lot of people are confusing having information and how to with actually doing it. And I've been fascinated just in understanding, how do I help people unleash more of their potential that already exists? And a lot of people may have heard, they say that we only use 5 to 10% of our brain. That's not true. We use 100% of our brain's capacity and neural networks every moment of every day. But the potential to use more is there. And so our researchers at NeuroGym really are uncovering how to take the best information from the world of neuropsychology, neuroscience, and give it to everyday people so they can say, okay, how do I overcome my fear of not being good enough, my fear of not being smart enough, my fear of being embarrassed or ridiculed or ashamed, or fear of failure or fear of success. These are all psychological issues that everybody feels, but very few people understand. When I feel that, what do I do about it so that I can unlock more of my potential, so I can actually take more action, first on the things I already know that I could be and should be doing, but I'm not, and next on the behaviors that I could be taking to achieve my success easier and faster. And that's really my passion, is helping people unlock that amazing potential within them.
What really captivated me was when we were talking earlier about how there's certain people that always view the world in a certain way. Yeah. Some of them view it as always like half empty. A lot of people will be more negative, more angry, just by autopilot. They might have these triggers just by certain things that have happened to them in their lives. So when they will associate certain people, certain events, maybe even just certain times of the day as like this negative feeling. Yeah. How do you program or reprogram people or help them so that they're not in that state that they're kind of bringing everyone else down? It makes it easier to work with them.
Sure. So there's a lot of factors that go into that. But if you think about what makes up who we are. So obviously there's genetics. There's our genetic makeup. So our predisposition, our propensities. And that makes up a percentage of how we see the world and how we show up. But then the rest of it, we're trained on. So we're trained to see the world a certain way. So there are certain people that have something called a negativity bias. And a negativity bias is nothing more than they see the negative first. It's not that they don't see the positive, but they see the negative first. There's other people who see positive first. They have a positivity bias and they see that first. And the truth is, in almost every situation, in every circumstance, there's both. You can train somebody to recognize that there's always both, just like every inside has an outside, every one side of a coin has another side of a coin, every up has a down. That's called the law of polarity. And in the universe that we live in, there is that law of polarity. And so you can teach somebody, say, okay, if your propensity, if the way you naturally are is negativity biased first, great, be aware of that. Then flip over. We call it flip the switch. So if one side of your brain is going negativity first, great. Learn to flip the switch. Go, great. What's the positive side of that? That's a skill you can learn no differently than playing tennis or chess or music. So that's number one. There are other people that catastrophize everything. So they see everything and it's a catastrophe. Little things are a catastrophe. Big things are a catastrophe. So when you teach people the biases that they have, positive or negative, and their propensities for thinking traps, everybody gets into these thinking traps. And so some people get into positive thinking traps where all they think of is positive, 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 and they don't realize, hold on, what's the risk here? What's the negativity? And these are just skills that you learn through awareness. So first is you have to recognize, what is my propensity for thinking? What are my natural emotional states? Am I mostly positive, mostly negative, neutral? What am I? So you recognize thoughts, emotions, and you recognize behaviors. How do you do that? Stop. You stop and just start to be more aware. We are in a society that just goes. Texts, emails, phone calls, Facebook, Twitter, Vine, all these things are keeping us on this perpetual hamster wheel of do, that very few people stop and say, what am I doing? What am I not doing? What am I thinking? What am I feeling? So the first part is stop. Second part is to reframe. Okay, it's called the 4R process. Recognize is first. Reframe is the way I'm looking at something. And because we are monofocused, the brain cannot focus consciously on more than one thing at a time. All right, it can get distracted to that thing, then this thing, then that thing, then this thing. The art of multitasking is actually one of the worst things that you can do from a neurological perspective. Highly successful people are able to monofocus on the right things. So when you learn to reframe your brain's ability to look at this, then look at this, then look at this, but stay focused on what it is that you're looking at, you see different perspectives of it. The next part is to release the emotional stress that most people's brains are under. How do we get into this emotional stress? Well, when we have fears, there's 50 different types of fears. Fear of success, fear of failure, fear of disappointment, fear of being embarrassed, fear of being ashamed, fear of being ridiculed, fear of fill in the blank. When our brain goes on these automatic fear circuit drives, then we're in a state of fight or flight. In a state of fight or flight, over a course of a day, a week, a month, our ability to actually use our thinking center, the left prefrontal cortex of our brain, actually diminishes. Our brain gets hijacked into this fight or flight response system over and over and over and over and over again. And that response system is actually pretty healthy initially to get you going and out of the gate. But if you are always in this fight or flight response mechanism, you're on this hamster wheel, you actually start to get burnt out. And you can't think, you can't use the genius part of your brain. You can't really activate the part of you that connects to the entire universe of intelligence within you and outside of you. And so you learn to release that tension to be able to put the foot back on the gas, change the gear. If you think about what happens when you're driving a stick shift car, you put your foot on the gas in first gear and the car just goes. But if you keep your foot on the gas in first gear, you're going to burn out the engine. So what happens in the release part of using your brain is you go from first gear, pause, second gear, pause, third gear, pause. You're able to use the engine more efficiently to go faster. Exact same thing with our brains. If we learn how to release the tension and switch gears, release the tension, switch gears, that's the art of release and go. And that causes the fourth R, and that's we retrain our brain to operate at higher levels of our intelligence, genius, and abilities.
That's awesome. I love that.
That's a long-winded answer for you.
That was fantastic. Yeah. It also makes me think about some of the people who you're talking about earlier. You have people who have experienced a lot of tragedy or trauma, or maybe they have a situation where they're caught in a massive amount of debt and they can't really think about anything else.
Sure.
I know that we've had a lot of times where we've been under pressure of like media or other things like that, and then it forced me to do things like golf, and that's like my relaxation. But I think that even though I could have things like golf, there's a lot of inner stuff that I need to deal with. And I guess there's a way where you reprogram people's minds so they could heal first before they could actually get involved with taking action. Yeah. So what does that process look like?
Sure. So when we talk about reprogramming, I think the important thing to understand is 99.9% of what we think, what we feel, and what we do, although most people think I'm in control and I'm the one doing it, it's really non-conscious patterns that are repeating themselves over and over again. So let me explain. When you and I were born, the only neural networks that we had were for survival, right? We didn't have any beliefs of, are we good enough? Are we smart enough? Are we worthy? We didn't have any experiences to show us that that's a scary situation, that one's not. Snakes are safe, or snakes are dangerous, or spiders, or heights, or whatever the case is. So over the course of the first 7 to 10 years of our life, our brain's plasticity switch, our brain's switch that connects all of these neurons and creates the neural map in our brain is being created in the form of millions of connections per second. By the time we're 10 or 12 years old, that switch basically goes off, and now there's more selective creation of neural patterns based on what we like, what we dislike, what we experience, what our parents tell us, what our teachers tell us. Up until that time, we're just an empty, open nest where everything's being formulated. And so what happens is after 10, 12 years old, we're pretty much running on autopilot, and we become conditioned or trained to see the world a certain way, to feel certain things, to behave in certain ways. And so most of our life we're working on autopilot because the non-conscious processing parts of our brain is working at 400 billion bits of information per second and trillions of electrical and chemical reactions per second happening without our thinking about it. And so for adults, 25, 35, 45, 50, we have these patterns that we have to revamp, almost like a remodeling of our own brains. If you think about, when you're driving in a town that whether you're at home or in your city that and all of a sudden you see a detour. If you take a detour and then you start driving down that new detour for a day, 7 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, that detour becomes the new easy road to take, even though you're used to going a certain way. The brain works the exact same way. So if you've got these patterns that are easy for you, your brain wants to take those patterns that are easy for you. Easy thinking patterns, easy emotional patterns, easy behavioral patterns. Why? Number one, because it's less energy that the brain needs to use. So law of best use of energy in the brain is where it goes first. So the way you retrain your brain using, for example, the 4R process is you recognize my patterns of thought, my patterns of emotion, my patterns of behaviors. And you ask yourself, are these going to help me achieve the goal that I want to achieve? Whatever the goal is. It's just yes or no. If they are, great. If they're not, then what you want to be doing is saying, okay, how do I change that path? How do I change my thinking? And so we know from the brain research that ways to access the non-conscious part of the brain are through some self-declarations. You can use words, you can use visualization, you can use meditation, you can use mindfulness, you can use subliminal programming, you can use guided hypnotherapy, you can use 8 or so different methodologies to access the neural patterns in the non-conscious brain and repattern it faster than if you try to do it consciously. And so in our company, Neurogym, we've just developed some evidence-based methodologies with some of the world's leading brain researchers using evidence-based technologies to disrupt the brain's patterns that are normal for it so that we can actually access the non-conscious mind and repattern it that way.
Cool. Now, you called your company Neurogym because you're kind of like doing a workout routine for your brain. So I guess what are some of the workout exercises that you have your clients do on a daily basis to keep that brain healthy, fit?
Yeah, so a really good analogy, a lot of people have seen the P90X workout where you're doing a variety of different workouts for your body, for your physical body. What we've done is we've taken the best of visualization, meditation, mindfulness, subliminal programming, and we've created some audio programs that our clients listen to for 20 to 30 minutes a day. Sometimes while they're walking, sometimes while they're working, sometimes just sitting quietly with their eyes closed or eyes open. And we use disruptive patterns of their conscious brain to bypass and get into the non-conscious brain so that we can share a metaphorical story about achieving success. So that metaphorical story that relates directly to them is something that their brain starts to accept as their new reality. And if you start to change the non-conscious patterns, it then governs thought patterns, emotional patterns, and behavioral patterns, since it's doing it anyway, but you're doing it on your own. So we've come up with a formula where we can help people retrain their brains without really doing any work, just putting on headphones, using their iPhone or their iPad to access our material. As they do that, we also have training modules to help them upgrade their knowledge and their skills. So for example, if somebody has, a fear, like where is that fear? If I have a fear of spiders and you don't, then that means that it's not the spider, okay, that's the issue. It's the meaning, the pattern that I have and the associations I have with, let's say, spiders, that's the issue. Well, where is that pattern? Well, it's in my non-conscious brain. It's in my brain. Well, what if I can disrupt that pattern using technology? What if I can disrupt that pattern using a variety of evidence-based methodologies, whether it's cognitive behavior therapies that you listen to and you participate in? Well, that is what we're doing. We're just helping people access the parts of their brain where the patterns exist, disrupt the pattern, help them create a new pattern so that the fear goes away. The emotion of fear is an effect, right? It's a feeling. So if we disrupt the pattern, we disrupt the unpleasant feeling that we call fear. So we've learned a variety of different ways that are all based in neuroscience and neuropsychology to disrupt patterns, create new patterns faster than ever before, so that people start to feel better about themselves and about anything that they want to achieve in their life.
How much do you think that, because one of the things that we always preach in our company is always field experience is king, and about how you need to go out there and take action. And
yes.
From that, you learn lessons that kind of give you the reference experiences.
Absolutely.
Yeah. On the other hand, there's also a lot of the preachings from my business partner. He talks about how, he's really involved with the higher purpose and meditation and spirituality, and trying to get that ground so that when he is taking action, things are more successful.
Absolutely.
I guess my curiosity is, could you talk a little bit about the balance between action and learning from reference experiences versus, just thinking about it?
Sure. So the parts of the brain that register an experience versus the part of the brain that can imagine an experience are not different. So if I imagine doing a bicep curl in my mind, I see my arm moving and I'm doing a bicep curl in my mind, I'm accessing the occipital lobe part of my brain, it is no different than me going to the gym and doing a bicep curl. So when you do both, you solidify the experience even more. Now, I want to just talk about what you just said about your partner who brings in meditation. When most people are asked to do something that they're fearful of, the sympathetic nervous system in the brain kicks in nanoseconds, not in minutes, in nanoseconds. That's the fight or flight response system in the brain. So they want to run away or they freeze and they can't do anything. But if you take that same experience that you want them to do and you have them do it in their mind first in a calm state. So first, if you have them visualize doing that and they feel nervous, but you just have them do one little thing, 6 breaths. Why 6 breaths? We know from the research now that if you imagine in your mind doing something that you're fearful of and you allow the parasympathetic nervous system to rule, that means that you're going to be shallow breathing, you're going to raise your blood pressure, you're going to activate your sweat glands, and you're going to activate all of the fight or fear response mechanism, the fight or flight response mechanisms. And that is a very tense situation to be in. What if you could take somebody and have them imagine that exact same thing, but before they take the action, they see themselves, they just take 6 deep breaths. 1, see yourself doing it. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What happens is, because you're breathing deeply in and out, your parasympathetic nervous system, okay, kicks in. Why? Because that is the relax response mechanism in the brain. So if you consciously activate your relaxation response mechanism with something that would normally be stressful for you, you actually deactivate the fear center in the brain, the amygdala. And you actually open up your thinking center of your brain, the genius part of your brain that can actually override the fear center of the brain. It's a small little mechanism that you can just learn how to do. So I say you do both. Not one or. Learn both. Goes back to upgrade your knowledge and skills and saying, why am I afraid? Which system of mine, is operating right now? So think about this. When we walk into a room, we could flip the switch and turn on the light because we want more light. Well, why not flip your own genius switch? Why not flip off the switch of fear and anxiety and stress and flip on the switch of calmness, certainty, and creativity? It's your switch. We just haven't been taught how to turn one switch off and turn one switch on. Highly successful people, whether they're taught it like we teach it, or they just know how to do it automatically, they do it. They feel fear, and then they release that fear and they take action anyway. So they can turn their fear into fuel is one of the things that we teach people how to do. Turn your fear into your fuel. And when you turn your fear into your fuel in a calm, centered way, you now are able to use that neuroelectrical chemical called epinephrine or cortisol, the stress hormones, and use them to fuel your success faster and easier than ever before.
My business partner Owen is going to be really excited to watch this.
Oh, good.
He's a huge fan of yours after he met you at Tony's place when you were doing your seminar, and there's so much that he wanted to learn from you, and this is really awesome.
Well, this will be perfect.
One of the things that we're also working on expanding is a program where we're not just doing, it's kind of like the same thing we do on a boot camp in terms of pickup. We're doing it for businesses. We're wingmen for sales. We've gone to conventions with people in the real estate business where they walk up and they have a real estate magazine, a very successful one. It's one of our clients is the father of the main founder of the Summit Series. Mm-hmm. They have a company called BizNow. Have you heard of them?
No, I haven't yet.
It's a really successful real estate newsletter. And they went to this convention full of real estate multinational CEOs, and they had their sales team there, and we were their wingmen. We're undercover sales reps.
Love it.
We'd walk up to them and try to build rapport, connect with them, and invite them to have drinks, and then talk to them about how we could promote them for the BizNow newsletter and help them with advertising and contracts. But most of them stay together. They wouldn't want to leave. When they see us, they would sometimes just walk away from us because they know we're going to make them approach these people. Now, you were talking about how there's a certain kind of module that you have in your membership site where you're talking about business and how to train your mind for success in business. What are some of the big important lessons that you teach?
Well, one of the things that is really interesting, just based on what you said, there is something in business, whether it's for salespeople on the phones or salespeople in person. On the phone, it's called call reluctance, and in person, it's called contact reluctance. And so if you think about what does that mean? So I have a call reluctance. I have a reluctance to call somebody that I don't know. And so when some people think about calling somebody they don't know when they're prospecting or meeting somebody they don't know, if you think about what is it that is actually happening that causes them to feel that. So as soon as they have the thought, their neurochemistry kicks in, because the meaning that they have is, if I call somebody that I don't know and they hang up on me, they yell at me, they say something nasty to me, then they are attacking my identity. And in most cases, they have associated the attack on their identity in a negative way, such as well, maybe it's true that I'm not good enough. Maybe it's true that I'm not smart enough. Maybe it's true that I'm not worthy. So they have a negative association with somebody's response that they don't even know about who they are. So the first thing we work on is let's focus on your self-esteem. Because it's the self-esteem that's being attacked. My self-esteem and self-worth is being attacked. So when my self-esteem and self-worth is being attacked in a negative way or unpleasant way, I'm going to process that as danger in my brain. Now, when you understand the brain's number one responsibility is to move you away from danger or pain, that's number one on its hierarchy of how it behaves. So if there is real or imagined pain or discomfort, your brain says, stop, put the brakes on, go the other way. That's what's happening. So the first thing we do is we teach people, number one, let's change the meaning that you have around what somebody else's response is around who you are or what you're doing or what you're offering them. So the first thing we work on is change the meaning, you change the feeling. And so what if that person's having dinner when you're calling them? What if that person just had an argument with their girlfriend or wife and that's the reason they're reacting that way? What if they're just busy doing something and they just don't need or want to hear what you have to say? Can't it just be okay that that's the only meaning it has? It has nothing to do with who you are, how kind you are, how nice you are, how smart you are, how good looking you are, how anything. Could it be that way? Yeah, it could be. Great. Now let's just see you in your mind calling or meeting somebody and let's rehearse them saying no, or no you fucking asshole, what the hell are you bothering me for? Get away from here. Can't we just rehearse that 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 times in here first so that we can diminish the emotional impact that you have right now thinking of the unpleasant or negative? And the answer is yes, we can. And if we can get you to practice that in here before you even take action, then what happens is I'm gonna change the neuroelectrical chemicals in your brain in advance so that the firing threshold doesn't automatically cause you to run away from the situation. So I could do that in somebody's brain 1,000 times in 20 minutes versus having them do 1,000 calls or 1,000 intros.
Yeah. Well, one of the things you were talking about earlier was about using visualization for success. And I also remember that when we were at Tony Hsieh's place, one of my friends, Adam Farfan, he asked Tony a question. He said, what is it that you think led you most to your success to become a billionaire? And he said, well, the first thing is I decided internally I wanted to become a billionaire first and foremost. And I know also that you created a vision board.
Yeah.
And on that, you kind of create a roadmap. Like, can you talk about the importance of visualization, how that's helped you?
Yeah. So there's something that we teach called cognitive priming. What's cognitive priming? First and foremost, we know that each one of us has 35 to 50,000 thoughts a day. And those are just random thoughts that are happening within our brains. And not only are we having internal thoughts, which is different from thinking, but just thoughts, just neurons firing thoughts, we also have an enormous amount of influence from our external world. You know, people trying to get at us, whether it's advertisers, whether it's friends, whether it's whatever it is, there's enormous amounts of information coming into your brain. So your brain is consistently analyzing, deleting and distorting what it needs, what it doesn't need for survival first, and for you to achieve whatever it is you've become comfortable achieving. The patterns run your life. So, why use a vision board? Why look at your goals every day? Why emotionalize them? Like, why? Because your brain is really, really, really smart in some ways. Let me explain. If you take some time every day, like every morning and before you go to bed every night, to say, hey, here's what I see myself being, doing, accomplishing. If I do that every day, then I am priming my brain to focus on what it is I want it to focus on. Now, visualization is one of the best ways known to access the non-conscious operating system of the brain. And if you do that on a regular basis and you see yourself, you develop the pattern in your brain first, the brain then looks for things in the physical world to match the pattern. See, a lot of people think that, when I see it out there, then I'll believe it. And all of the successful people know, including the neuroscientists, no. It's when you believe it in here, that's when you'll see it out there. So visualization is one of the tools that you can use to create the pattern in your brain. When you have a vision board or your goals in writing that you look at every day and then you emotionalize it, you are actively participating in the development of the pattern that you want your brain to help you find and become. And so the reason we do what we do with our brain training programs is we help accelerate the speed at which we can get that pattern into the non-conscious part of the brain. So if you think about by yourself, you're like one programmer. Using technology, you're like 10,000. And so we're using technology to become your 10,000 programmings, repatterning 20, 30, 40, 50 years of neural patterns in your brain.
Now, you have a lot of really talented neuroscientists and researchers, and you gave me a huge list earlier of the people that you've been working with, from Harvard professors or educators to people who are really tinkering with these things. And I guess I'm curious what kind of research you're doing for the future, and also what research you've done in the past.
Yeah, so the stuff that I'm fascinated with is behavior, right? Perception and behavior is how I see myself and how people see themselves and why. And then how they see the world and why. And then we know that the action, in The Secret, you mentioned earlier, I was in The Secret, and the thing I loved about The Secret is it gave people some hope that changing my thinking really can make a difference. But there's also the other part of it. In the law of attraction, there was one thing that was left out, and it was called the law of Goya. And the law of Goya is the Goya law. It's the get off your ass law. There's nobody that I know other than trust fund friends, okay, that haven't had to do any work to achieve their success. Nobody that I know, whether it's Tony Hsieh, whether it's you, whether it's me, whether it's Mark Cuban, it doesn't matter. Richard Branson, Oprah Winfrey, doesn't make a difference. They've all had to take actions, but it's not just any action. It's taking the right actions in the right order at the right time consistently. And so I've been fascinated with how do we help people develop the mental, emotional, and behavioral habits that lead to success. Because that's the key. Mindset, skill set, and action set. That's the formula. And so the research that our neuroscientists and neuropsychologists provide us with is what drives behavior. What are emotions? What are feelings? What are the 6 core emotions that are processed at the non-conscious level that give rise to feeling? See, feeling is conscious awareness of what I'm experiencing in my body. The emotion of anger, disgust, shame, happiness, or fear is processed non-consciously. That gives what? An electrical signal that we feel. That's called feelings. And so what we're fascinated with is how are people processing information that gives rise to feelings, which then causes people to take action or not. So that's the kind of stuff I'm fascinated with. And then how can we help somebody shift their perspective? If you change the way you look at something, the feeling changes. So if you change the meaning, you change the way you look at something, the feeling changes. If the feeling changes and we help people put their foot on the gas instead of on the brake, then they're going to take action. And most people, if everybody's watching right now, they're thinking, why am I not doing, forget about learning anything new. Why am I not doing the things I already know I should be doing? So a salesperson, you mentioned earlier, they know they should be prospecting. Why aren't they prospecting more? Why not? Well, it's because something in their brain has got the brake on. Why not discover why, get your foot off the brake, take action?
I love this law of Goya because I met with a guy who was in Australia, and he went to one of our seminars. He goes, Nick, I no longer want to go out there and meet girls. I said, why? He goes, well, because I found the secret, and I'm going to visualize and just think that a beautiful girl is going to knock on my door, introduce herself, and we're going to get married.
Yeah, he's going to be next.
And I also met one of the producers. I can't remember his name, but he was one of the producers of The Secret. And he was working on a new film called Magic Pill. Have you heard about this? So we had dinner at Eden, the Summit Series has their base, and he was doing an interview with me, and I told him, well, I think the only magic pill is you taking action is the only magic pill there is.
There's definitely being in resonance that I'm totally agreeing with. If you think about a radio, and a radio is a good example. If you were on 98.5, let's say there's rock and roll on that station. At 98.9, there might be classical music. At 99.1, there might be big band, okay, music. So I do agree that when you get aligned mentally and tune in to what it is that you want, you're in resonance with that energy field. And there's millions of frequencies, okay, all around us. So the first thing is, yes, get totally cleared, get totally on the station of what you want to achieve. That's step one. If you're here and there and here and there, then you're on a variety of different stations. And I totally believe that our brain emits a frequency based on our predominant thoughts and emotions, and it also is in a receptive state when you're practicing certain spiritual practices, or you're on that frequency and you're on that channel. So I do believe in that. That's called being in a resonance. But I do not believe for 1 second that while we're sitting here in this hotel room, okay, at the Encore Hotel, somebody's going to knock on the door and say, John, Nick, you guys just won $1 billion because we are in resonance. No, we have to participate in the process and do something to help create that. And that is the piece that most people are forgetting. On this physical world, or in this physical world that we live in, we have spiritual laws, we have physical laws. And the physical laws, we can measure and time a rocket ship within a fraction of a second and put it on the moon. Werner von Braun, discovered that we could do that. But then there's the non-physical spiritual laws. And yes, there's some randomness, but there's also a highly ordered universe that we live in. So the first part is get in resonance with what it is that you want. Second part is, what do I need to do to move myself towards that? What tool, what resource, what knowledge, what skills, what strategies, what tactics, what people do I need to coalesce with, unite with, to help make that a reality? And it's the person who combines those two that achieves the most success.
Well, you've created many amazing modules and programs, and also have written some books. Can you talk a little bit about the books that you've written and what they're about?
The first book I wrote was called Having It All, Achieving Your Life's Goals and Dreams. And it's really about understanding the natural laws of the universe as we know them, not airy-fairy laws. So there's a law of transmutation of energy. Everything is energy. This body of mine and yours and everybody else who's watching is just nothing more than 100 trillion vibrating packets of energy. Well, our thoughts determine how these molecules and atoms vibrate, and what we resonate with and what we repel. Then there's the brain. Okay, our brain is nothing more than an electromagnetic switching station that receives and transmutes information, energy. And so, how do you use the parts of the brain that we know can activate, the genius part of your brain? So, for example, we call the left side of your brain the genius Einstein part of your brain. The right side of your brain we call the Frankenstein part of your brain. Why? This part of your brain we know is going into the memory bank whenever you have a thought or an idea or a goal that you want to have, and it is actually looking in your memory bank for anything real or imagined that could hurt you, and it brings that forward to your consciousness for your awareness, just to protect you. That's the first part of the brain that kicks in. If you don't know how to flip over to the left side of your brain, the left prefrontal cortex, to activate the genius part of your brain, you're going to be stuck in all the reasons why you can't achieve something. So in the book, I teach people how to utilize universal laws with some of the most advanced brain research to set, but more importantly, achieve goals. That's having it all. Then I wrote The Answer, which is all about helping you achieve business success. So the first part of the book is diving a little bit deeper into the quantum universe of intelligence, the brain again, but also how do I attract more clients? How do I create processes and systems to build my business? Third book was the Vision Board Kit, and all around creating your own vision board so that you can tap into the brilliant part of your brain to use your intuition more and to cognitively prime your brain every day. And my newest book that's coming out is called Inner Size. So instead of exercise for your body, my new book is around inner sizing your brain so that it does all the heavy lifting, so that you alter your beliefs, your habits, your perceptions, and your behaviors so that they become automatic and help you achieve success in health, wealth, relationships, career, business, fun experiences, charities, etc.
That's great.
That's the fast version of all of that.
Well, check that out. We'll put the links below in the description. Now, you also were talking about something I thought was a really fun name, which is called the Brainathon. I'd love for you to talk about that, and I know that you're having a huge event. I think the 5th annual Brainathon happening really, really soon. Can you talk about that and when it's taking place and how people could join that?
Yeah, we'll put a link if you can, for the
Absolutely.
Brainathon. And so
I'll put the link below, and also I'll put it in the video as well, so people just click on it.
yeah, so what happened is a lot of people, when I started to do the research and I started to hire teams of experts, they said, God, we'd love to learn from these people. So I just started doing something called a Brainathon, where I could interview and interact with some of the top brain researchers in the world. So whether you're, I've got, for example, Srinivasan Pillai, one of the leading behavioral psychiatrists in the world, graduated from Harvard with more honors than everybody else, was the head of McLaren Anxiety Center, a neuroimaging expert on the brain. He's been on our Brainathon several years, so he's going to be on this coming up Brainathon. I've got Dr. Evian Gordon, one of the leading neuroscience integrative medicine experts in the world on behavior, thinking traps, psychological traps that people get into, brain retraining expert. He's going to be on the show. Daniel Friedland, best-selling author, amazing individual on also integrative medicine, specifically mind, body, spirit. I've got Sharon Pearson, a neuro-linguistic programming expert from Australia on how to overcome traumas and fears and stories and excuses that we tell ourselves, and how do you repattern your brain for that. I've got Mark Waldman, 12 books on the subject of spirituality, your brain, overcoming fears and doubts and things that are holding you back. He's on the Brainathon as well. I've got, actually this year I got Larry King, he's not a brain expert, but he has interviewed 35,000 of the most successful people, celebrity chefs, business moguls, athletes, murderers. They don't fall into this, but he's interviewed people, and we're going to get from him what were the common denominators of the most successful people in the world. So there's myself, Evian, Daniel, Srini, Mark, Sharon, Larry, and this year on the Brainathon, I also have David Bach, who's one of America's leading financial experts on the mindset of the most successful people that get out of debt and then create, a rich life. And so we combine all the practical how-to with the neuroscience research on how you can break free from any of the mental or emotional obstacles that may be holding you back. And so we do a Brainathon. The people join us for an hour or up to 8 hours, is what we've done in the past, of just pure amazing training. And we teach people about our brain retraining methods of how to really take the latest technology and the latest evidence on how to change your brain so that you can have a clear path to your success. And so we'll invite everybody here. It's free, it's fun, it's exciting, and you'll learn cutting edge stuff of what's working. No airy-fairy, foo-foo, secret stuff. This is pure scientific stuff.
Awesome. Thanks, bro. This has been amazing. Man. Write comments below. Let me know what you thought about this video. If you have any questions that you want me to answer, or if you want to get more information about NeuroGym, please post it below. And thanks for watching the video. Cheers.